Hi everybody, welcome back to the Slow Flowers Show with Deborah Prinzing, and I'm so delighted today to welcome Stefani Bittner, my dear friend and owner of Homestead Design Collective based in the Bay Area.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thanks for being here. We're in my hotel room. We're both in downtown Seattle for the Northwest Flower and Garden Festival, which has been taking place the week of Valentine's Day, and Stephanie's in town. You gave 2 talks.
I did.
And we knew you were going to be here, and I asked you if you would sit down with me, and I'm so excited to, first of all, welcome you back to the show.
Thank you.
It was 2018 when you were on the show here at the same deal. You were up here talking about a book, Harvest, but now we're talking about the Fragrant Flower Garden. And this is a beautiful new book, hot off the press. It'll be released on
March 5th.
March 5th, okay, so almost hot off the press, but we've got a copy to show off today. This is a book with a subtitle, Growing, Arranging, and Preserving Natural Scents. And we're going to talk a lot about designing for fragrance and how that influences flower arranging and cutting gardens and all. But first, let's just talk about you and your business.
Sure.
Homestead Design Collective. You're Slow Flowers members. I'm so appreciative of that because your residential landscape design business has so much to do with cutting gardens.
Oh, definitely. I would say about 70% of our clients now come to us wanting cut flower gardens.
Wow.
They're so inspired by the documentaries, by Instagram. I mean, flower farmers on Instagram, oh my goodness. So my clients are on Instagram, they're deep in thought about the dahlias, about the zinnias, they're seeing all these images, they're coming to me and they're like, I want my entire backyard to be full of dahlias. And that's when we have the come to Jesus moment of saying, wait a minute, we are not a farm, you're a garden, and how do we design a space that is water efficient? We garden in a drought state. So water is very expensive in the Bay Area.
California has just been so hard on garden lovers.
It's been hard.
But you just have to shift what you're planting, right?
Exactly. And we take out lawns, we create very low water, really beautiful, very harvestable spaces, things that can be used for arrangements, that can be used in the kitchen, but they're super low water. And then we create spaces for crops, either food-based crops, flower crops, that are water efficient and they're on their own hydrozone. Hydrozones are, if you think about the timer on your irrigation,
yes.
So the station, we make, there can be one station that has medium to high water, it's watered really efficiently, then you have your dahlias there. But
kind of in their own little community.
In their own little community, because if you are in a residential area in California, you cannot grow flowers for profit, thinking that you can, turn your backyard into a flower farm and sell those flowers, because the flowers would probably be about $50 a stem when you look about your input in terms of water.
So people who are flower farmers in the outer rim outside of the urban centers in the Bay Area, they're probably zoned agriculture. They have access to different water.
Right, they're zoned agriculture or they have wells.
Oh, okay.
There are some folks that do it. And again, it's a very precise farming, and it's not gardening.
Yeah.
A garden needs to really support your lifestyle. It needs to support space for eating and play, and really a garden really frames your house and welcomes you. And that can't be a crop that is mowed down each season, right? You need foundation plantings. You need a focal front yard tree. You need screening plants from your neighbor. All of those plants can either be edible or fragrant. Both. There are many edible plants that are fragrant. They can be things for your arrangements. A lot of the plants in the Protea family, we're talking about grevilleas, leucodendrons, they're beautiful evergreen plants that bring in pollinators, and they're also like a stem of leucodendron, like at my local florist, sells for $15 a stem.
Right.
And
the
so
foliage is fabulous.
It's fabulous.
I couldn't help but thinking about when you first started, or when I first got to know you, you were preaching beautiful edible gardens, and that's the name of the book that you wrote with Leslie Bennett, and it was that was kind of trying to get a cultural shift going about how people saw their gardens.
Definitely.
So now you're layering in fragrance as just yet another feature that people can be considering, and flowers fell into that continuum as well.
Well, really, our philosophy at Homestead is really about harvestability.
Mm-hmm.
So it's harvesting for the kitchen, it's harvesting for the vase. if you are growing food in your garden, you need to have flowers because you need pollinators. The fragrance of flowers is not for people, it's for the bees.
And thank goodness we've got that pollinator need, because sometimes people think flowers are, superfluous or, not an essential.
No, they are extremely essential.
Yeah.
So our gardens are already filled with perennial crops that give you food and flowers, and so this book is really highlighting the importance of fragrance. This book could have also been called the pollinator garden. It could have been called the harvestable garden. It's really celebrating fragrance, and it really talks about how to design a garden space with fragrance in mind, the plants that make it up, and then obviously then how to do flower arrangements based on fragrance, and then also how to preserve natural scent. So these are small projects for a garden space, not a farm space.
Right.
So this is stuff for the everyday person can do.
I love this picture on the cover. You said you had just gathered these.
So this is that's actually me, and so I had just cut everything to do one of the projects in the book, and Alethea, who's my co-author, just literally was like, wait, stand there, and just was like, doot, 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 doot. And then David, our photographer, took the photo.
Was this at your garden?
This is in my garden.
Okay,
yes.
so you're in East Bay.
I am.
And what is your water situation? How do you irrigate?
My drip.
Okay.
And I have a very high water bill. Even so, this year I have a very old garden. I inherited my parents' home, and
so a lot of established trees and shrubs.
A lot of established things. So what I've done the last 3 years is I just turned my irrigation down by 60%.
Wow.
And said, who's gonna live?
Wow.
And it was actually kind of amazing to see who lived. All the fruit trees are actually very low water once they're established. Camellias, which also go very low water.
Interesting.
Oak leaf hydrangeas, also
Thank
very
goodness.
low water. I think that's the only hydrangea we really plant in the Bay. I really kind of looked, and then what happened is a lot of plants reseeded. Hellebores, oreganos, a lot of the herbs reseeded, and I actually have like a fragrant herbal meadow in my garden that Mother Nature did.
Right. You
So
could never have strategically planted that naturalistic look.
I think I could, but
Well, you could, but most people could.
But I think allowing Mother Nature to actually do that and give it the space and time. But like I'm doing with all of my clients, most of my clients, I'm removing lawns these days and creating these very low water gardens. We're doing that in my own home garden as well right now.
Is a lot of this book photographed in your garden?
It's photographed in a lot of in client gardens and our gardens.
Show us some of the inside.
I'll show you a couple.
Oh wow!
This is a garden that we did in Healdsburg, and this is a food-based garden here. But you can see surrounding it are all of
roses,
flowering basil.
Oh.
There's calendula. There's scented geraniums. Yeah. It's really highly fragrant, and again, we need to have the bees come and visit these guys to then come and pollinate the cucumbers that are right here. You can't have cucumbers unless they're pollinated.
So this is a client's garden.
This is a client's garden.
They wanted kind of a French potager style.
They do. Their house is very much inspired by a French potager style. I should know these by heart.
It goes back to that whole harvestability, right? That you mentioned. Oh my God, that's
This is
gorgeous.
another cut flower garden that we have in Marin County. You'll see that there's
here's hydrangeas.
Oh yeah. There's hydrangeas in this garden. We have them on drip. Our client does not want to give them up.
But also, there's trees in this garden. You had mentioned shade.
Yes, so shade is really important. We were talking about the difference between a garden and a farm. I really believe that we need to reshade our farmland and also our cities and our gardens. We're experiencing long bits of really high temperatures, and we need more shade.
Wow. And then that protects the plants obviously from getting fried, but
yes, it helps. How we plant as well is really important in terms of how we keep water retention in.
Yeah, thank you. That's easier.
I wasn't gonna go there. I'm bad enough with Latin. So, but definitely, if you think about it, if you have plants whose leaves are touching like this, and then they create shade down here in the soil, it really keeps the moisture in the soil from evaporating very quickly.
Yeah,
so
we
definitely do a French intensive planting with our edibles and our cut flowers to help keep the moisture levels more even, and especially with crops that want more water, like dahlias and zinnias and all of the fun cut flowers, we need to create very even moist soil.
Interesting. That's interesting. Well, your last book, Harvest, which came out in 2018, is all about perennial edibles.
Right.
And we had recorded an episode of the Slow Flowers podcast when Stefani was here. Oh, that might have been the last time I saw you. I can't remember.
It's been a while.
And we were in the lobby of this hotel doing that interview with Alethea, and you had this crazy brainstorm. You just said, I know what my next book is going to be. And then I was in on the secret, mainly because I was sitting there.
You were sitting right there. No, you were definitely, and it's so funny, I was thinking about it, because you had mentioned something in the interview, and I think if I went back and listened, I could probably
maybe about the senses or something.
About senses, and it just, like, the lightning bulb went out, and I was like, I know what the next book is. And it was this.
Well, it's interesting being writers and authors. We always have plans for the next book. They don't always materialize, but here you are. You had COVID in the midst of this, and yet you have beautiful photography, and it's filled with recipes. And that's not the right. Maybe they're more like projects. It's just sort of the approach that you educate people about what to do with the plants in their garden. So this book has recipes for preserving fragrance, and I think that's such an interesting way to think about it. So we can talk about maybe some of these projects. First of all, you go through design, you highlight all your favorite plants, but I love that you do it by categories: trees, shrubs, perennials, vines, the whole bulb and tuber family, and then annuals, so that people see it. It's so much beyond just the garden rose, and that's
so much more.
Like the trees and shrubs are interesting to think about. So you highlight your favorites.
Yes.
And then you talk about ways to
do flower arranging.
Yeah, ways to use your fragrant flowers. I love that, and but also herbs.
Definitely.
And then all the things that you could do with cut scented plants. It's not just flowers. Also, there's herbs in there as well.
Definitely, and foliage. So it was scented geraniums.
Yeah.
Right? Definitely, there are projects that you can do with plants that have scented foliage as well.
Okay, so there's jasmine and citrus blooming oil, the potpourri tub soak, the gardenia stick perfume, the healing hydrosol, and the aromatic garden tincture. Let's look at one of those and just hear a little bit about how. I think the one that caught my eye was this. This is so beautiful.
Thank you. Alethea and I both grew up during the 70s when our moms had the really horrible, stinky bowls of potpourri in the living room.
They capture a lot of dust.
Yes, they capture a lot of dust. And so when we were rethinking about, teaching people how to preserve scent from their garden, potpourri came to mind, and to really update it.
Yeah.
Really drying plants is one of the easiest and oldest forms of preservation, and you can do that with scented plants. The take that we did on it, though, is that we used plants that were not only fragrant but also really good for your body.
Oh,
so
that's
like
the tub soak.
And so you can tub soak as well.
Okay.
So you can put it out in a pretty bowl and have the fragrance of the bowl in the room. And in addition, you can take a muslin bag, put a couple scoops in, and throw it in your bathtub. And then you have this beautiful fragrant tub experience that also is nourishing your skin.
Right, because for every ingredient in this soak recipe, you say whether it's what its trait is that is good for the skin. I love that one. I'm going to try to make that this summer. And then the other one that I was so interested in, and of course, there's a lot in here about perfume making because of Alethea's special talent. Which is also interesting because that's technical.
It's very technical. This is very much, I think my approach in general is very much based upon common sense and then also small scale for gardening. Okay. So we do show how to, we talk about doing a hydrosol. You can.
That's this page.
That's this page over here. Having a copper still, you can make essential oil.
Okay.
However, you need to be on a flower farm to have enough flowers to actually make an essential oil. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of stems.
That's how the lavender
farmers do it. So instead, we teach folks how to do a hydrosol, which is the flowering water, which you can use as a face mist. There's so many things you can do with a hydrosol.
Oh yeah, that is so cool.
And we do it also with kitchen pots. So you can of course get a still, but you can also do it with a couple of pots.
And that's like this, or jars.
This is different. This is actually a tincture, which we use as a perfume.
Okay.
But this one's really fun too.
Yeah, you said that this is a kind of a daily, you could do this as a daily practice.
Yes. So the idea behind the flower tincture is that you're extracting the fragrance from the plant on a daily basis through a non-scented alcohol. You can use Everclear, which I had a ton of leftover from COVID. So, because I thought I was going to make my own hand sanitizer at one point.
Right.
I didn't. So instead I made perfume. So if you have any Everclear left over from that, but also you can use a perfume. They have perfumer's alcohol. You could use vodka. If you use vodka, obviously this can become a cocktail as well. But the idea is that you're doing small batch. So you're harvesting, let's say we have stock right here. So we're harvesting the stock flowers. This is the flowers, the little flower buds of just 2 stems in this jar.
Wow.
So you're just taking a small amount.
Okay.
You're filling up the jar with the non-scented alcohol. You're letting it sit for 24 hours. You then actually use a sieve and you pour out the alcohol. You capture that, and then you start the process again. And you start. Then the next day you take 2 more flowers worth of 2 more stems worth of flowers.
Wow.
And then you're extracting this fragrance, and then usually after about 7 or 8 times, you get to a point where you can be like, I want to stop, or I want to make it headier, like stronger. Or sometimes what we'll do is that then we'll start mixing other scents in.
I was gonna say, then you might want to shift to a different. Well, if you're doing it through the seasons, it's going to change anyway with the flowers that you're harvesting.
So you can do it as a single flower of just stock, or you could do one with like rosemary and chamomile. It really becomes and it just becomes a way to preserve your garden. So you can have a year's worth of scent on your kitchen cabinet. So.
Well, I think that's what I find so inspiring about what you're doing is that you're bringing the home gardener, the residential flower lover, closer to understanding the importance of the slow flowers movement, and you're also helping, I would hope, through this book, showing your peers who love flowers but are growing them commercially how to connect with the consumer who wants to know more about what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, my clients are the clients of the flower farmers.
Okay.
So, my clients are the ones that are buying the bouquets, they're watching the documentaries, they're all over the Instagrams, because when I meet with them, I'm seeing everyone's Instagram photos. They're showing me, I love this farm, I love this farm, I want to do this.
It's like getting the Pinterest board when you're
I get them.
Yeah.
And it's really inspiring because, I mean, what the slow flower movement has done is really introduce the love of flowers back into gardening, which is I'm really excited about.
Yeah, there was that pendulum that swung after 2008 when the economy tanked and everybody was like all about food security and flowers were considered frivolous. So
not anymore.
I think the pollinator conversation saved flowers from being just trashed and not included in true gardening.
Right.
So now it's just delightful to see.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think the part that what I'm doing is we're taking inspiration from the flower farms and we're translating it into gardens.
Right.
And
in a realistic way.
In a very realistic way.
Tiny residential lot.
Tiny residential lots with water restrictions. Again, just really understanding your growing space and how you're using the flowers. That's why multi-purpose flowers that are really good for the vase, but you can then do a scented project for. Like that's really exciting to me because you can do multiple things with them. But then I also hope that what's happening in the gardening world can inspire what's happening in the farming world. Because I definitely see a lot of what's happening in the flower farming world, and I really hope that they can, that folks can start kind of appreciating how their consumers are actually are getting inspired by them.
Yeah.
So
I also thought that your point about bringing sort of regenerative practices into the home garden, that's an agricultural term, but.
Yeah, so regenerative farming is a really exciting movement. You see that a lot in food-based farms, and I'm hoping that the flower farming world will also start following more of regenerative practices.
Yeah, we're seeing that too, especially with maybe like trying to keep the like almost what is it called? Biointensive, where you're keeping all your materials on your property and then
biodynamic farming.
Yeah,
I mean, what's exciting about biodynamics is it's about closing the circle of sustainability.
Yes.
And really, keeping all your crops there and recycling your crops and also having a fertilizer source. which again you can do on a farm. We do that in gardening on a small scale.
I was going to ask you about that. How
We
can
do.
you do that?
So, so compost bins.
Yeah.
And compost crops.
Yeah.
We do a lot of comfree so that our clients can actually have their own fertilizer on site. And then I really believe in an animal source for fertilizer. You know, I'm obsessed.
Is that why you have chickens?
I'm so obsessed with my chickens.
Okay.
But more importantly than chickens, because not everyone can have backyard chickens.
Yeah.
Rabbit. So if we want to talk poop, if that's all right.
Yes, let's do it.
So rabbit poop is the only animal poop that can go directly into a garden as a fertilizer source. It doesn't have to be composted.
Oh, interesting. And it's
So
tiny.
It's tiny, and so if our clients already have pet rabbits, we just teach them how to then use the animal byproduct as a fertilizer source.
It's just sprinkle it across the top of
Sprinkle
beds.
it across the beds. That's
Wow.
all you have to do. And if not, then a worm bin.
Okay.
Worms can really take that place as well.
Oh, interesting.
So,
do you design worm bins too?
No, we just place nice ones that are already done well.
You know you have sources.
We have
Yeah.
sources. There's some, why reinvent the wheel when it comes to worm
Right.
bins?
There's probably some people in the Bay Area already
They're
manufacturing worm
making some
bins.
beautiful ones, but we do custom compost bins,
Okay.
and also we have done some custom chicken coops as well. But
Of course you have.
Of course we have, because why not? But I do think taking the best ideas from farming is what I've been doing, and taking them into the garden world.
I love it.
And then really, what about regenerative farming that's really exciting, and how my interpretation of it, in many ways, it's reintroducing gardening back to farming.
Okay.
So really having multiple crops, perennial crops, shade crops, really bringing back kind of a garden sense to the farms. I think these monocrop farms really are setting themselves up for failure, because you're very susceptible to disease, you're susceptible to pests. You have one bad season, your entire crop is gone.
Right. There's no diversification.
There's no diversification.
That's interesting. What about if somebody, like I know a lot of aspiring small scale flower farmers, of course they want to grow everything.
Right.
So they might have 100 different varieties, and they're in rows, but they're integrated, kind of like a patchwork quilt or stripes. Is that diverse enough?
I think so. I mean, it's a farm by farm basis.
Yeah.
So you really have to, with any garden or farm, you have to know where you are,
Yeah.
and what your growing conditions are, and also what types of pests you're susceptible to, what the soil health. I mean, introducing soil crops is really important for any farm.
What do you mean by that?
Well, so cover cropping.
Okay.
Also, I'm a big believer in using comfrey in gardens.
Okay, when you talked about compost crops, and you mentioned comfrey,
Mhm.
so those are soil crops as well. Then they can just be tilled in. Is that
They
what you
can
mean?
be tilled in.
Okay.
It is a perennial, so typically what we do is after the comfrey has its spring flush, we cut it at the base and then either soak it to make a comfrey tea that we then fertilize our plants with, or actually what I like to do in our orchards is actually just take the leaves and lay them at the base of our fruit trees. It keeps weed suppression down, and as the comfrey breaks down, all the nutrients go into the soil and feed the
And the
plants.
foliage is so big.
It's huge.
You can
They're
just
big.
make a little blanket of it.
Yes. So I think more people should be
Your
planting
clients
comfrey.
just think you're crazy. Like this, there's no mow and blow guys around.
Oh, there's no
when,
mow
when
and blow.
Stephanie shows
No,
up.
there's no mow and blow. But
But they're
that's
all
okay. They're all in, and definitely, and some of my clients, we are taking out lots of lawns, but some people have reasons to keep them. We really try to meet people where they are,
Yeah.
and then go from there. And so, no one should be worried that we're going to come in and totally redo their space in a way that they can't live with. Gardens need to be low maintenance. They need to be low water. And it needs to be really enjoyable. It needs to be beautiful.
Wow, that's great. And it needs to have fragrance. And I
Yes.
love the message of this book so much. We mentioned it in, we actually highlighted quite a bit of it in the 2024 Slow Flowers Insights and Industry Forecast. First of all, I was so inspired by the fact that it was coming out this year, so I knew the timing would be great. You generously shared the photos with us, and we had a separate interview about it. So that I'll put that link in our show notes so you can go back and read what Stefani has to say about, that it's almost like the personal connection people have with fragrance, and it kind of gets them excited about flowers then, and excited about having flowers in their garden that bring back a scent memory.
Well, I mean, fragrance is one of the most important things with memory making.
Yes, I've heard that.
Yeah, so I experience this a lot with our clients, is that they might feel so be like, my grandmother grew scented geraniums, or a parent grew strawberries, but these are crops that actually have fragrance associated with them.
Yeah.
So, and we have actually designed some memorial-based gardens as well, and fragrance has a huge part in that.
Yeah. Wow, I love it. So what else are you working on these days?
So, Italy.
All right, I'm with you.
So we had a really incredible experience at Homestead during COVID. We actually designed a regenerative farm in Tuscany and spent time in Tuscany once we were able to travel.
Right, that's
and
amazing.
designing that space. And just as life took me, my sister and I recently bought a property in Puglia, Italy. That it's a rental, and we're on 20 acres of farmland. We grow olives and almonds and pears and apples, all native cherries to Italy.
So there's a big orchard there.
Massive orchard that our next door farmer takes care of for us. But I am planning on really creating a beautiful garden space and an outdoor teaching area for cooking classes, and we're really hoping to make this be a retreat for folks. Right now you can just rent it. The Sleep's 15 with a big old pool. It's in the heartland of Puglia. It's amazing.
Does it have a name?
Truly Trasanara.
Okay.
And
we'll put the link in the show notes so you don't have to quickly write that down.
Yes, but if anyone's going to Puglia, hit me up. We have a beautiful rental.
Oh my gosh.
But the goal is in the future, as we are, I've been spending time there, getting to know the local farmers. Actually, kind of amazingly, a local farmer gifted me the black artichokes of Ostuni. Ostuni is a nearby hill town, and his farm is in the foothills of this town, Ostuni, and people have been farming on that spot since before the time of Jesus.
Wow!
And there is a native artichoke.
Talk about terroir.
It's incredible.
Wow!
And so he actually gave me some artichokes in December. That's the first thing I've planted myself in this garden.
Oh,
but
wow. He gave you the plants.
He gave us, I visited his garden. He just took his artichokes, whacked them off, gave me some sets, and said, plant them.
But that whole idea of the plant adaptive,
yes,
like that is the super hyper local artichoke. It's going to do fine.
It's going to do fine,
even if you're not there to water it.
Oh yeah, it's doing great.
That's exciting.
And it needs winter water, but that's it. So that's. And then obviously we're creating gardens in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
We design gardens throughout the country and also now Italy. But we build the gardens in the Bay. And so
does Homestead Design Collectives design, build, and maintain?
We do.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. And it's also a lot of work to you're undesigning gardens that were inspired by the English cottage garden or something that completely are a fail, and trying to give someone that same sense of, lush abundance, but with Mediterranean plants.
With Mediterranean and California natives.
Yeah.
California natives are very beautiful plants.
Yeah.
Highly fragrant, by the way, and great for pollinators. And we're intermixing them with Mediterranean-based plants. These are all plants that can handle wet winters, dry summers, which is what we have in the Bay. And also these plants are highly fragrant and also very harvestable.
Yeah.
So we're taking out as many lawns as people will let us.
I love it. Stephanie, thank you so much. This was so much fun. I'll put all the details about the Fragrant Flower Garden in our show notes. Links to Stephanie's places and to her special place in Italy in case you're planning a trip over to Europe. It might be, I want to go. It sounds wonderful.
We have to go.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.